I'm joined by Canterbury Councillor and all-round commentator on agribusiness and the environment, Megan Hans. Good evening, Megan.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Thank you for taking the time to join us, talking about watching little ones grow up. I'm enjoying watching your little one grow up. How are you getting on being a mum in lockdown and being an Canterbury Councillor?
It's been very busy times. We have been doing council meetings all online, and you'll appreciate that's difficult anyway. But when you've got a little one who's learned to crawl at your feet, it's also adds another complication.
Nothing you can't handle, I know, Megan. Now, firstly, what do you make of this budget?
I think there's probably carrying on from the theme that Tim and Sam had a little bit before me, talking about the devil will be in the detail. I think there's obviously a lot of spending here. It looks like the Greens to me have got some good wee wins here in terms of getting some of this green spending in here. And the infrastructure spend is something I'm really interested in, but we don't yet know where that might go and what that might look like. So it remains to be seen what decisions those ministers will make there.
The two actually can go very well hand in hand. I had a lovely interview the other day with Mark Pisey from the Central Plains Water and explaining the environmental improvements from bringing both together. Do you yet believe that this current government can understand how that can work?
I think there is hope for that. I think it's we'll sort of see as the detail comes through. I wouldn't be pinning huge amounts of hope on seeing a reimagining of the likes of the RDR on this government. I think for me, you're more likely to see projects that look a little bit more about climate change and putting in natural infrastructure lens over other big pieces of infrastructure. I think if you look at the shovel-ready projects that the likes of the infrastructure New Zealand guys like Mark Binns and the likes have looked at, they're very much talking about other infrastructure, and we know there is other infrastructure throughout New Zealand that is sorely in need of upgrade. So I would pick that it would go there rather than into big water storage projects. But I think there's room for both.
Okay, so talking about things like pest eradication, a pet project of Eugenie Sage's and wilding pines, of course the end of tenure review, another pet project of Eugenie Sage's. Do I need to continue? This says, and there is a lot here that has been an opportunity to sink the funds in that they have wanted for a long time.
I think that's true. There's some really good potential for projects here. I mean, you just have a quick look through what that $1 billion for environmental funds is. I think we'd be silly to criticise this as being about pet projects. We know that we need to have some investment into our natural environment, but we also know that when we invest in the natural environment, you've got to work in closely with the willing. So working with the willing, working with the sector, working with the landowners that are in that space to really get the best bang for buck you possibly can. And I think that probably lines up a little bit with where Tim and Sam were earlier as well, around getting those policy settings right. If there's some funds here and some opportunities here to do some really good stuff around planting, around pest control, around creating jobs as well, I think it's really important that we make this $1 billion work the best we possibly can for both the environment and also for our economies, rural and urban.
We are of similar age, Megan, and they talk about the next generation paying this off. We sit nicely in there, and I worry about my parents' retirement and all those sorts of things as well. Are you concerned about the length of time this is going to take for us to get back to the sort of good old days of 2019? I mean, from 87, it really wasn't until sort of early mid-2000s that we really started to have some good times.
Look, yeah, I am really concerned. You'll know me in terms of where my head will be at with that stuff. I think the glimmer of hope in this is the environmental projects. We're looking at intergenerational debt here. We have some intergenerational debt in terms of our natural environment, and if we can start to make some more moves in that space with some of the debt that we're taking on, I think that's really important, and I think that's a good thing to do. As long as all of this money is spent wisely, and it's about government departments that have received this money working really closely with local councils like ourselves, with your docs, your iwis, with your community groups and your landowners, we can make this work. But for me, it's really, really important that you get those partnerships going, work really collaboratively. this is my personal view in terms of how all of this plays out. But I think that in Canterbury, we're getting so good at collaboration in terms of working across those groups and stakeholders. I'd like to see that happen elsewhere throughout the country as well, because I think there is good potential here, but it's not going to be about how the government creates it. It's going to be about how the government partners with everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was in Grant Robertson's speech today about those partnerships with not only the private sector, but also local government. And of course, Environment Canterbury have had a good track record of that sort of collaboration, of course, with the stakeholders on the ground as well. Talking about biosecurity, 500 million of that, there was a lot probably pegged on either M-Bovis eradication. You'd be happy about that?
Yeah, from my perspective, in terms of putting my industry hat on there, I am happy about that. You'll know that I have kept a close watch on the mycoplasma situation. There's no point in starting a job and not finishing it and not working through that. So I'm glad to see there's still some funding there for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is $500 million, and there's quite a bit focused on the ETS as well. Do you think that there's a lot of sort of helicopter funds, yet we haven't really defined science to make sure this is strategically spent?
Yeah, I think, again, the devil's going to be in the detail. If you flick through the budget document, and it is lengthy, there's a couple of different lines in there that sort of piqued my attention in that space around emissions trading scheme, but also around that investment in the greenhouse gas research with the Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Centre and other science projects. I am a science nerd. I would have liked to see even more science and innovation spend, but hey, look, we can't have everything in a situation like this, and we just have to make the dollar go as far as we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, our sector has been in a good position for a long time, and there is a lot of industries that are certainly a lot worse off than us. There's a lot of countries that were coming from a debt loading level far higher than us. I mean, I'd hate to be in the States right now. I mean, in terms of helicopter cash, she's the only...
Yeah, it's pretty scary. It's just for me, it's a really scary situation for the whole world. And when you're looking at those GDP figures that are looking at, we're not even talking about recession type figures. They're looking, and Cam will talk more about this after me, I'm sure, with far more detail and far more knowledge in economics than I could ever possibly have. But I think it's really important that we do give thanks for the previous finance ministers that we've had, but also think about where this could be a sort of a little bit of... Robertson talked about a reset today, and I think people get a little bit scared by that. And for me, I see that as an opportunity. The whole world is going through this massive crisis. It's going to be a huge economic crisis as well as the health crisis it's been. But every crisis presents an opportunity. And so I think instead of being really down and depressed about the situation we're in, let's pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, do what we absolutely do best, and make the best we possibly can out of it. And I think we absolutely need to all work together on that, no matter what our political stripes are.
Megan, what a wonderful way to leave that, because I think the quote that was circulated around the team on the first week when we were all freaking out was, "Don't waste a good crisis." And I tell you what, Sarah's country didn't waste a good crisis in terms of what's come out of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's Megan Hands, ECAN Councillor, and as I said, all-round great agribusiness and environment, excuse me, I'm jumping over words, commentator.
This is Sarah's country.